Hello, Romita.
Hello, Michelle. How are you?
I'm awesome. I'm so grateful that you're here with me today. Thank you for joining Michelle's Conversations That Matter.
Thank you. Thank you for having me, and thank you for inviting me. I'm so excited to be here and have this conversation, Women in Burnout. I'm so looking forward to it.
I know it's such an important topic. I've had numerous people on my show where we've talked about, women empowerment, but we've never really tackled the women in burnout. So I'm excited to really talk about this with you, given your background and your mindset. I think it's just amazing. But before we dive in, just a little bit about my series. So people who might be tuning in for the first time know I have a series called Michelle's Conversations That Matter. What I'm up to is really elevating, first of all, elevating the conversation about mental health, and then having people tell their stories powerfully, and really leaving people inspired or educated or just connected to someone new that they haven't met. And I'm grateful for you and the work that you're doing. I know that you are a stand for women, so I'm all about empowering and inspiring men and women alike. So let's get right into our conversation today. But first, could you introduce yourself? Tell us who you are, where you live, and what you do for a living.
Absolutely. So my name is Romita, and I often like to change my titles around because I can. Why not? So I call myself a unicorn. I'm also the founder, CEO, chief glitter officer. I play with titles all the time, of my coaching business, Glitter for the Soul. So what I do is I help women reignite their souls to reach their highest potential and live with purpose. I help them dismantle the ladders in their life so that they're living a life of abundance and freedom and on their own terms authentically. And currently I'm waiting patiently in North Carolina for this pandemic to pass through. I'm a digital nomad, so the world is technically my home. So hopefully 2021, I'll be able to walk down the aisle again and listen to the powerful words. This is your pilot speaking.
Awesome.
And continue the travel.
I love it. I love it. When I thought about this topic of women in burnout, I was thinking about the pandemic, like you just mentioned, and all the hats that so many women are having to wear, men too. Mm-hmm. But today we're talking about women. I think about the women who are doubling as teachers at home, working full time, trying to be everything, the partner, the parent, the good employee. And I think about the slow burning flame that it could, really take its toll on women if they don't really take care of and nurture themselves. But before we dive into that, I would love for you to take a moment and share with us, why do you do the work that you do? And I'm sure there's some backstory about that we would love to learn about you.
Yes, absolutely. So how I describe the work I do, the ladder is the reason why I do it. And what's the ladder? The ladder for me is the caste system, the social status system, rules of society, the things that we are supposed to do to move up the ladder or the space up through life. So as a kid, we are given rules, we're given guidelines. Okay, first you go to elementary school, then you go to middle school, then you go to high school, then it's college, then you get married, then you do this, you have a job. Like there's so many, there's steps, and based on your background and your culture, your steps may vary, but you still have a ladder. You're having this ladder and this organized, process that you're supposed to go up. And that's what you follow. The rules are what they are. And the ladder is why I do the work I do. Is my goal is to dismantle the ladder for all women. And for women not to just stand in their power, because standing in your power is one thing, but knowing your power and having the ability to authentically navigate and get to explore your power before you stand in it, that's powerful. And I think you can only do that when the ladder is gone, when we take the ladder away. And the ladder is so part of our lives. So what started with me was I lived on the ladder. 15 years I was in corporate. I survived. Not only did I survive, I thrived. I did well. I was climbing that ladder. I was like a super climber. I was like, the bar would be raised. I'm like, oh, I got it. I'm prepared for you. And I would continue climbing. I would wear all these hats. I'm good at wearing, like, okay, you need me to be this. Okay, you need me to do this. Okay, I need to be a designer. Now I need to be a psychiatrist. Now I need to do this. Like, we have all these hats that we wear. And as women, we get really good at wearing, like, you have your mom voice, you have your wife voice, you have your friend voice, you have your daughter voice, you have your, you have these different voices, and I think of them as hats too. We're naturally, right? We're just like a snap of a finger, you can just navigate through it. Well, in 2016, my mom died, and that shook me to my core. And I fell off the ladder because I didn't know how to grieve. I didn't know how to deal with a loss of that magnitude. Like, she was my mom, she was my best friend. I'm even getting like choked up a little bit just talking about it. And the only thing I knew how to do was to get back on the ladder.
Yeah.
Because that's all I knew. I didn't know, like, I was in this space of unknown and uncertainty, and I was like, I didn't know how to navigate that. No one taught me how to navigate that. That was not in my life rule handbook that I was given in any of the education I took. So I got back on the ladder. But here's the thing. I got back on this ladder injured.
Yeah.
So I started making decisions based on thinking, okay, how do I continue moving forward on the ladder? And I made decisions based on the illusion that I was moving upwards. But in turn, I was actually going backwards. And I landed a job where I ended up being a token hire. This job was the carrot dangle. It was supposed to be my dream job. And I was like, wow, I'm finally like making headway in my ladder. They're paying me more money. This is going to be awesome. But when I got into the role, it started breaking me down even more. And I started consuming even more hats it was almost like you're given this role, and all of a sudden everything you were good at is no longer good enough. And now you have to do more. And now you have to, it's kind of like this pandemic that we're in. Yeah. Like, we were doing so well, and like, oh, now you need to work from home. Oh, wait, now you got to babysit your kids. Oh, I need you to homeschool in between your 9 to 5. And it's like the bar is just being raised, and there's no, like, there's this yardstick that you have to meet. And you're like, can I just breathe? Like, can I go to the bathroom? Like, can I just, you're just, I felt suffocated. And that's the point where I was literally crying myself on my way to work. I was so burnt out. I was so tired. And I was talking to my dad, and my dad asked me this question that was, to me, so powerful. He was like, what's the most expensive thing you own? And I'm like, my house. That's probably the most expensive thing I own. And he was like, no, it's your mind. Your mind is the most expensive thing you own. If you don't have that, you have nothing. So what are you doing to protect your mind? And that question shook me to my core. Like, I was like, holy crap. Like, I gotta do something about this. So I quit the job, cold turkey, no plan, terrified as hell. I was like, holy crap. I remember I left my job. I put in I'm going back to my emotions of it. I was like, oh my God. Okay. So I just quit my job. I had bought a brand new custom design house. Now what do? I got to go find another job because I need to get back on the ladder. That's what my body was like. That's all I knew. Yeah. So I hired a coach, and I had worked with coaches over the year, but this time it was different. I had to go through a process like, what if I didn't have the ladder? What would I do with my life? What would be my dream life without the ladder? And how would I go around exploring myself? So I went through the process of dating myself. When you go out and look for a partner, you look at, how their relationship is with money, with the family, what's their world impact, like who they are spiritually. I was like, okay, I'm going to do that with myself. Who am I? What do I need spiritually? What does my mind need? What is my environment like? I had to rekindle my relationships with different aspects of myself. It was almost like me rebuilding the ladder. And I went through a phase of living in abundance to its most truest form. And I know sometimes living in abundance is a bit taboo because you're like, oh, you're being too positive. You're not taking the realities of the world. And we tend to live more in a life of scarcity because we're always looking for the trouble before it gets here. We're wanting to be prepared, right? Proactive.
Right.
Living in abundance is you know what you have and you know that you've been given the tools in life. You may not know what they are.
Right.
But I redated myself in all these aspects. So I started rekindling those relationships of what my true needs were and who I was as a person. And I ended up, what happened was I sold my house. I got rid of a lot of things that were, and for me, my ideal dream life was living out of a suitcase and seeing the world. You know what really pissed me off about my travel, about my corporate life is anytime I asked for a vacation past 2 weeks, they always said no. No one gives you more than a week vacation.
Yep.
What are your vacations, staycations? They're doing things around the house that you didn't get time to do when you were in your regular day-to-day life. So I was like, I'm gonna take like a lifelong vacation. Like that's what I want my life to be like, because I got to make up for 15 years of no vacations. So I got a suitcase and I started traveling. 14 countries later, I'm developing. I went back into, and I was like, you know what? I think it made me want to teach other women. Not necessarily you have to live out of a suitcase and you have to, travel the world. You can dismantle your ladder in your own way.
Right.
And you can live the life you want under your terms. And you can create your own title. I like to think of myself as the chief glitter officer because I am constantly exploring the glitter in the world. And it helps me live my life in abundance. And it all started with me being burnt out, getting rock bottom.
Yeah.
And getting exhausted, meeting all the levels and the bars and the expectations I had to live.
Yeah. I love what you say about an abundant mindset, that, you don't have to have all the physical things to have this mindset of abundance. And I think that the fear of not having that stability is what sort of keeps us women in our place, right?
Yes.
The fear of I'm not going to have enough, when really, is enough ever enough when you're climbing the ladder? No, you're always striving for more money, more stuff, right? But this abundant mindset is a very powerful thing. So how do you have that without the stability of the ladder in the corporate job?
I actually learned it at my corporate job. Oddly enough, I learned it at Disney. So I think of an example that comes to mind. When I was at Disney, I was a duty manager. So I was working a late shift that night. And I had this couple, it was the Epcot's Food and Wine Festival that they have every year where you drink and eat around the world. So this couple comes in. There's a ferry that drops them off at the boardwalk resort, and there's like a boardwalk, a pier. So I don't know how the ring ended up in the water, but the woman lost her wedding ring or her engagement ring in the water, and it went into the lake. And of course they call security, and I happen to be the one that comes out, and she's frantic. She's like, oh my God, I lost my ring. I got to find my ring. And, both of them. And the guy's like, we got to find the ring. So it's like 12 o'clock at night. I have these two people screaming at me, and they're like, we need to find the ring. And mind you, it's midnight. The water is a man-made lake. It's murky water. There's alligators swimming in there. There's water moccasins swimming in there. Like, how am I supposed, and there's algae, like God knows what's in that water. I don't even want to know. Well, let's diverse. So I'm like, my one answer could have been, I am so sorry for your loss. I'll work on it for you and see, we'll do our best, was my answer, could have been my answer. But, at Disney, they taught their cast members to live in abundance. Like, we are Disney. We have everything. We have everything we need. Just, you have to look for it. And we have it. You just got to just find it. Call somebody, you can find it. So I said, you know what? I'm being honest. It's nighttime, it's dark. Give me the morning. Let me get with the team and see what we can do. So after they left, I was like, holy shit, what am I doing? Like, what did I just tell this woman that I was going to go, like, do I swim in the water? Like what? I kept on the brave face. So I was like, okay. All I could think of was Epcot had living seas, and divers are used to feed, like to refill and like clean the aquarium and in the living seas. I was like, what if I could get one of the divers to come out and they could just, like dive in this, and we knew the general vicinity of where it is. So they were like, okay. So I called Epcot, and then I got in touch with the living seas manager, and then they got in touch with the divers, and then the divers were like, well, we'll need the boat. So we call the ferry boat, and they're like, oh, we have a small little pontoon boat that we that we can take out there. And then they're like, but we're going to need to call our weather guy, because then we need to see like with the wind and how the waves are, the rift of the water, how it's flowing, because it could have migrated the ring, the water could have moved the ring based on like the way the wind was, for that night. I was like, oh, I didn't think about that. So I knew a resource. That's all I knew. I knew it was out of Disney, and we had the resource. I didn't know what it was exactly. All I could think of, surface level, let's get a diver.
Yeah.
The diver found another resource. And then the boat folks, they found another resource. And then soon enough, like we had this team of like 4 or 5 people working on this ring. They found the ring because they all used each other's resource. I didn't go in the water. I just called I put it out there in the universe.
Yeah.
And, the next morning we were able to call that guest to the front desk and say, hey, we have some updates for you. Do you mind coming down? And I let her speak to the divers, and the divers presented her with the ring.
Amazing.
It's all about, and I think you've been in situations where you make a decision because you make a gut instinct and you just follow your heart for a second. And then we go into panic mode.
Yeah.
And then we go into panic mode, and then we either talk ourselves out of our dream or our voice or our inner, where we're supposed to go. And then when you follow your panic mode and just follow that fear, if you allow it, the universe will make it, will turn the stones for you so that you can see where it is. And if you experience it enough, you start to make it a habit.
Yeah.
Following your fears versus letting your fears guide you.
Yeah. I love the one thing that I love that I'm going to steal from this conversation is that, yes, Disney is a very big organization and it's abundant and it has resources. But I also would argue that us as individuals, as women, we are incredibly resourceful, and we do have the answers within, and we do have the resources at our fingertips if we just look. So I would argue that the same translates, but you have to have the mindset that you're cared for and that you have enough. Enough is within your reach, that you can access it. Otherwise, you're doomed if you say, I have nothing, or I wish I had, or I don't have, or, woe is me. So I love that mindset that you adopted, I guess. So now tell me this, how do you take that experience of traveling around and leaving your corporate job? Like, how are you taking that and how are you applying that and making a difference for women in your work?
I think for me, one of the biggest things as I was going through redating myself is I had to rethink. I'm not sure ego is the right word, but maybe it is. It is rethink the ego that I had in my mind of asking for help.
Yeah.
I was very resourceful when I was helping other people, but applying that empathy for myself, I found that a lot harder to sit in my own self. Like, what is empathy? Empathy is sitting in someone's shoes without judgment. But being able to sit in my own shoes without judgment and being confident to ask for help and know that I am supported by so much abundance of people around me. And I may not know what I need, but I literally can either post something on Facebook or post something on the LinkedIn community or make a call to my friend and say, hey, I don't know if you're the right person, but could you help me for this? And being able to ask for help to help me. And that was, I think, game changer. And it's easier said than done. As a woman, I feel like I personally have always without hesitation, if someone needs help, Like, absolutely. I'll like, let me, we'll find tricks out of random places, but when it comes to helping ourselves, it's almost like you freeze. And it's like, well, how do I do, it's almost like a mind shift. You just naturally go into scarcity mode versus abundance mode. But when it comes to someone else, you snap into abundance mode.
Yeah. I get that. Yeah. So I guess your mission is to help women get that. Is that your words in your mouth, but like, is that sort of what you're up to with the work that you're doing?
Yes. And I think when it goes into abundance, it doesn't matter who your resources is. Maybe it's a 5-year-old child that you gave birth to, or maybe it's your puppy, or maybe it's your neighbor. There are so many ways that you can utilize your resources. And once you start utilizing your resources for yourself, you start to realize that you don't need the ladder. And that's what I hope to do for women, is help them see that they don't need the ladder.
Yeah.
They've got everything they need right around them. And it comes in so many different shapes and sizes and forms. You just have to open your heart to see it.
Yeah. How do you practice that? I mean, are you a big advocate of like meditating to get connected to your inner self? What are some of your practices?
So meditation is a must for me. And something else I constantly am questioning myself when I'm living with intention. I'm understanding the why behind whether I'm taking a glass of water or I'm making a decision for my business. I'm understanding the intention behind it. What's my why behind it? And the other piece is like when I'm practicing empathy, I'm constantly with the meditation, I'm practicing empathy on myself. It's like, how am I feeling today? What's my body saying to me? Because your body will tell you when you have a backache, or you're having a headache, or something is going on, or your stomach's, churning, there's a butterfly feeling, your body's telling you something. And part of that process of meditation and practicing self-empathy is becoming more aware of what your body's telling you and how it's telling you. I remember this whole year, my face was breaking out like crazy. And it turns out like the media and the news, I was consuming it so much. And I think we were all like with a pandemic and the election, and my body was telling me, it was showing the irritation and the frustration. And I was like, I don't get this much acne. Like, why is this happening? And the peels weren't working. The microderms weren't working. The masks weren't working. I was like, I stopped watching the news. And I took myself away to stop and like, let me feel. And let me tell you, my face cleared up in like 2 weeks. It's all about, I didn't need a chemical peel. I just needed to listen and stop and listen to my body.
Yeah, that's so powerful. But I think women are so busy. Like the argument that I would get from my friends are, oh, that meditating stuff, that's a luxury. I just don't have time. Or if you saw what I have on my plate, it doesn't make sense. So how do we get women, like, do you have some recommendations for telling women how to proactively sort of prevent this burnout and take care of themselves? What are your words of advice?
I think I've heard with statistics, the first 3 hours of your day is where you're the most productive, you're the most impactful, those first 3 hours. Regardless of your lifestyle, kids, family, no kids, whatever that may be, if you even took the first 15 to 20 minutes, if you can give yourself the first hour, even better. Don't look at the phone when you first wake up. Don't give it to anything else but yourself. Put your hand on your heart and just ask yourself, what do I need today? Get in a habit of just listening to that voice. At minimum 10 minutes. Just listen to that voice. And maybe that voice tells you, you know what? I just need like 30 more minutes of sleep. Do your best to honor it. Or maybe it's, you know what? It would really make me, I got to do this laundry load or whatever, mundane. Like I just need to do this one task because it's really bothering me. I just need to get it off my checklist or whatever that may be. Listen, just start that habit, giving yourself 5 minutes, giving yourself 10 minutes, and then working your way up to, if you can build up to the 30 minutes and just giving yourself a moment to honor your own voice. Because you do it is busy. I get it. Like, you know, I've worked those 80-hour weeks, and sometimes they feel like whatever 24 hours times 7 is.
Yeah.
And you're constantly going and you're going and you're going. But taking a moment to just stop, and just that first, when you wake up, give yourself a moment to honor your voice, and then give yourself an opportunity to actually honor it with an action.
I love it. That's awesome. I forgot to ask you, I want to ask you this question around how your life experiences. I know you shared 2 pivotal moments for you in your life, and that was the loss of your mom and resigning from your corporate job. Those are 2 major life things. But like, how do you feel those and other life experiences have really shaped you as a woman who's doing this work to empower other women?
I think I wouldn't be where I am today without it. I needed all of those ups, and I needed all of those downs to be able to be the person I am today. And what it comes to me, what I come to this realization is all emotions are neutral. There are no good emotions. There's no bad emotions. And the reason I say that is because I needed the bad emotions to appreciate them, but I also needed the good ones to appreciate them. And being able to appreciate and have a deeper awareness, and I had to go through all of these ups and downs in life, has shaped me to be able to use and become greater awareness of my body compass and who I am now. When I'm starting to feel like I see the acne and I saw myself getting like closed in, I was able to nip it in the bud right away, because I had a stronger, deeper sense of my body, and I knew it was telling me something, and I knew I needed to stop and listen.
Right.
But it was me understanding the deepness of bad emotions, good emotions, happy emotions, joyful emotions, fearful emotions, like all of them. I needed all of them to create that awareness.
Yeah.
And I think it takes these steps that we go through in life. I think a lot of times we get into this pivotal point, like when I quit my corporate job, I feel like I'm starting from scratch. Well, actually, I wasn't. I was starting my new life from experience.
Yeah, exactly.
I was starting from experience. It's like, I was already moving up, and I just hit this plateau. And in order to get out of that plateau, I needed to make some shifts. Yeah. And for me personally, that shift was quitting my job. And now I've moved up, and I'm sure I'll hit another plateau and I'll need to make another shift. But this is my foundation, and I can only go up from here. And I need I expect to go up and down as I go around, the line's going to shift, but I welcome it, because that means you're living.
It's so true.
Life.
I think about the lily pad, right? Is it the lily pad that has to grow in the mud, and right? And like, it has to go through that to emerge into this beautiful flower. So we have to go through some of those trials and tribulations, because like you said, they shape us. As painful as they might be at the time.
It helps you experience empathy on a deeper level, not just with other people, but with yourself.
Yeah.
Because now you understand what it feels like to hurt, what it feels like to be happy. And then you understand the real joy of a good night's rest versus a night's rest. When you're able to differentiate between the two, and that it takes experience. So you need it all.
Yeah. One of the things I try to remind people in my resilience program is around grace and giving ourselves grace, like, because we're living through this pandemic, and it's like you can't practice empathy and compassion for anyone else if you don't practice it for yourself first. And that starts with giving yourself grace, that like, what we're all living through is not easy. It's like, these are crazy times we're living through, and people just think like, they don't stop and realize that the value of giving yourself grace and having self-compassion and self-empathy, because that enables you to be able to have that for others as well, if you can give yourself a break.
Absolutely. I think you hit a really big point. The word that just stuck out to me was the word grief. And I think this year is something that we've lost a normal lifestyle.
Yeah.
Right? And we've walked into a new normal, if you will. And who's to say this new normal will become our next phase and our next chapter in our lives? I remember when I left corporate, It was my normal. It was what I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the things I had to do was I had to take time to grieve that lifestyle.
Right.
I had to take time to grieve that life of busy. And I think I'm going through these next 2 weeks as I walk into 2021. I'm grieving a lifestyle that my dream life of the travel life and what that looks like. I'm going through this process right now personally where I'm going to go through and grieve it, because travel is going to be different as we move forward. And my lifestyle for 2021 as we move forward is going to be different. I love what I was doing, but now it's time for the new, but I need to allow my body to grieve it so I can live in abundance and accept the new.
Yeah.
Instead of resorting back to the unconscious scarcity that we tend to go to, because we don't grieve. And grieving isn't just when you lost a person, a loved one.
Yeah.
A grief is something when you lose something you love. It could be a lifestyle. It could be a couch. It could be anything, a house.
Yeah.
Going through those emotions.
Any other words of advice or wisdom you'd like to leave with women around the topic of burnout, or just in general that you want women to know coming from your experience? I
think asking yourself questions about, burnout is real. Burnout is an epidemic. And it's still, I think, to a certain extent, a dirty little secret. And I think the only way to really tackle that word and to really create the first step of burnout is really awareness, is to start having conversations at the dinner table, conversations with friends, with family, and start talking about that term and how it affects you and what it means to you, or what it, looks like in your world. And asking for help, finding it, whether it's not with a family member, a friend, a coach, a mentor. Look for help, and whether it's venting it out, but talk about it. I think if we talk about burnout and make it not a dirty little secret, I think that's going to be our first step with gaining awareness to actually do something about it, and to even take steps to be proactive.
I love it. That's great. So we have at the bottom of the page, on the ticker, we have your website. Tell us what you're up to in 2021 and what you're offering, and how people, if you want them to reach you through your website or otherwise. Yeah.
So for 2021, I am focusing solely on one-on-one coaching. I work with ladies one-on-one, and it's a 6-month program. I do 6 months because it's if you're wanting incorporate these change and make them long lasting, you got to have time to build the habits. So I walk women through that process, and we dismantle that ladder one by one, step by step. And you can reach me on my website, which is listed there, or LinkedIn. You can send me a message on LinkedIn, and we'll chat, and we'll see how I can help you.
Amazing. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today about women in burnout and all the great work that you're doing. I'm grateful to have met you. And here's to an amazing 2021.
Yeah.
Close the door on 2020 and leave it in the dust.
Yeah.
I wish you well. And thank you again for joining me on Michelle's Conversations That Matter.
Thank you so much, Michelle, for having me. And thank you, folks, for listening in today.
Awesome. Thank you.